data sets and studies now showing that if you take a puree of a Great Northern bean and you can put that into a simple corn muffin mix and take that puree and bake it into your corn muffins at like 10-20%, particularly a white Great Northern, you will add fiber, you'll add protein, and you'll add a lot more bioavailable iron.
Dr. Raymond Glahn, it is always such a pleasure to talk to you. I'm thrilled to have you on for a bean interview because you really do a work at the nexus of agriculture and nutrition, such an important space to be in. And I'm looking forward to hearing about your work on iron bioavailability, also your thoughts on other issues too, but how this has, importance not only within the United States, but globally. So I'm actually going to ask you to introduce yourself because you have quite the list of accolades and impressive research. So if you want to share your name, title, a little bit of that info, please.
Oh, thank you, Chelsea. It's a real pleasure to be here today. Um, my name is Ray Glahn. I'm a USDA scientist. I've been working in this field of nutrition for about 30 years, and as Chelsea said, at that nexus of nutrition and agriculture. Agriculture is food, and what we grow in our fields is important in terms of sustainability and health of our population. Our focus here at the Robert Holly Center in my research group has always been on iron nutrition and how we get iron from staple food crops and food products. So we've come up with some innovative techniques over the years to do that work. And as a physiologist, I've taken that type of approach, more of a medical health balanced approach. But we have these some unique screening tools, a bioassay to measure the iron delivery or the bioavailability of iron from foods. And we couple that with an animal model. We actually use poultry as a model for human nutrition, getting way back into the basics of nutrition. That's basically the essence of what we do here.
I mean, it's really important, and I want to dive a little bit more into when you're talking about iron nutrition, what's the difference between iron content and iron bioavailability?
So iron is a trace element. It's a very reactive cation in foods. It's an essential nutrient. So you have a trace element that's in this matrix of food, and it's influenced by everything that's in that matrix. And it's really, since it complexes to so many things, it's the exchangeability of iron with the components of the food, the proteins, the organic acids, the fiber, everything is important. And the flavonoids, everything influences iron. So you need to be able to have an approach that can basically encompass that and measure that effect. I think that's one of the best ways to explain it in terms of the exchangeability. Now, when it comes to iron content, because of that interaction with the food matrix, that's where bioavailability is so important. So just having a high iron food doesn't necessarily mean it's going to deliver more iron and more iron is going to be absorbed from that food. Actually, it can be, you can have very high iron, but it's complexed in a flavonoid or some compound and is not exchangeable at all. So bioavailability then says, okay, of whatever's iron in the food, whatever is released and accessible for absorption, that's what we're able to that's what you're measuring there with that term.
Well, this is a bean interview, and I know you're also very much interested in beans. So I have to ask, in terms of beans, what are you seeing in kind of trends of bioavailability? What market classes are looking promising? What are some differences you're noticing there?
Well, a lot of people always thought that beans were almost all beans were low in iron bioavailability. Okay. The primary factor that differentiates the market classes, the different color classes in terms of iron bioavailability, is the content and the profile of the polyphenolic compounds in the seed coats, the compounds that make the color. They're known as flavonoids. It's a general biochemical class, is another name for them. So by understanding those flavonoids, that's what we find is really important in determining the iron bioavailability. And the ones that have the lowest iron bioavailability are going to be your black beans, your dark red beans, the darkening pintos, and any of the darker colors, since say the purple or the cranberry or even the more rich and orange and yellow of the yellow market classes. Those are going to have that subclass of flavonoids that are very inhibitory for iron absorption because they complex the iron.
You said regular darkening pintos, and I think that's an opportunity to kind of say the difference between regular darkening pintos and slow darkening pintos in terms of iron bioavailability and maybe any other potential benefits. Do you want to share a little bit about that?
Well, that was a real exciting discovery that we first stepped into when we were working with the pinto beans about 6 or 7 years ago. There's two genes that control the darkening and the color and the flavonoid profile that are very important, and that's called the non-darkening gene and the slow darkening gene, and they're on different chromosomes in the bean. Those genes, we have found that when you take that recessive trait of the non-darkening or slow darkening genes, um, it changes the metabolic pathway and prevents formation of the inhibitory compounds, and actually then preserves some of the promoting compounds that promote iron bioavailability and absorption. And it relates to the color. So, if you look at a non-darkening gene compared to a normal darkening, you'll see one gets much richer, in that color class over time. That's really important because, like I said, it preserves the promoting compounds and eliminates and at least severely attenuates the formation of the inhibitory flavonoids.
Interesting. And I know I've talked with Dr. Juan Osorno and some others too, and there are a couple other potential benefits for slow darkening pintos, like cooking time. Do you want to talk about how that could be important as well?
Yeah, the flavonoids actually they can create a harder seed coat. Uh, uh, and some of the genotypes actually have a little bit thicker cell walls in the seed coat, so that relates to the cooking time, obviously. Um, but what's exciting about all of that is we can link that fast cooking trait to the high iron bioavailability, and that makes it very desirable for consumers. And there's land races that have been out forever, and certainly in Africa, that in the yellow bean market class, where we have some wonderful non-darkening varieties that are fast cooking and high in iron bioavailability. And some of the work we've done has actually been to identify those and demonstrate that, hey, this is where we've been getting a lot of iron nutrition for many years, and nobody knew about it. Same with varieties in the U.S.
Okay, and so for yellows, for instance, I've heard you talk about Manteca and maybe a couple others. So we're seeing higher iron bioavailability in whole beans after they're processed. How does that affect it, the processing aspect?
So that's what makes, I think, beans a really interesting crop to do iron research on. The non-darkening gene is linked to the flavonoid profile. Okay. Well, when you take away the seed coat of the bean and you're left with the cotyledon, the white part of the bean for the consumers out there, those cotyledon cell walls don't break down in our intestinal tract from our enzymes, particularly not in the upper small intestine where we absorb iron. They only start to break down when they get down lower in the small intestine where the microbiome, the enzymes from the microbes, can break them down. And by the time they get to there, the iron becomes the nutrient of the microbiome. It's no longer available to us. Okay. So processing and if you take if you can break that cell wall, that cotyledon cell wall in the bean prior to ingestion, either through like a pasta making process or a flour making process, some type of pressure treatment that allows the cells to break, then you release all of the nutrients that's inside those cotyledon cells and can be available and accessible for absorption. And in beans, it's about, on average, about 70 to 75% of the iron in a bean seed is within the cotyledon cells.
A huge percentage.
So
So
yeah,
that
when you break that, now you open up the door, and now you can have both positive and negative effects on iron from that. The seed coat polyphenolics that are inhibitory, like in a black bean or a red bean, will take that additional iron, complex it, and it just becomes unavailable for absorption. But you take a yellow bean or a white bean, where you either have the promoting compounds such as camphorol glycoside, or in a white bean, pelargonidin is a very common compound. Now all of a sudden, you have the opportunity to get a lot more iron available. And that's really, I think, a real exciting thing for the food science industry right
Absolutely. And I know you've done work with Dr. Karen Siki and maybe some
now.
others on pasta made with yellow beans, for instance. And so then you're seeing higher iron bioavailability there, but perhaps not in something like a black bean pasta. Is that correct?
That's correct. You can see a really stark contrast between the two. Um, the other thing that's exciting about the pasta making process is you make a more nutrient dense food simply by the roasting and extrusion of making the pasta. So we've actually been able to take our high bioavailable, fast cooking yellow beans and more than double, probably almost triple the iron bioavailability. It becomes a very high bioavailable iron food. But we've doubled the iron concentration as well. The exciting thing about that in a pasta is now you're getting a lot more protein, you're getting a lot more fiber, and we've tested them against commercial wheat pastas and fortified wheat pasta products, and they come out much higher in terms of the bioavailability in a typical yellow bean pasta. So that's really exciting stuff. There's hopefully we'll see some commercialization of that coming out with some of the bean growers and pasta makers out in Michigan. So
Excellent. I was going to say that is very exciting also because now you have pasta, and who doesn't love pasta?
yeah, and that's it's one way to get, we're trying to get Americans to consume a lot more of the pulse crops. So this is one of the ways with these types of products that we can get pulse crops into the diet. And it doesn't have to be pasta. We've got some excellent data sets and studies now showing that if you take a puree of a great northern bean and you can put that into a simple corn muffin mix and take that puree and bake it into your corn muffins at like 10-20%, particularly a white great northern, you will add fiber, you'll add protein, and you'll add a lot more bioavailable iron. So there's lots of ideas and ways to work beans in more into the diet simply by knowing, the bioavailability aspects of the different products out there.
Absolutely. Win, win, win in that situation.
Exactly.
So
Exactly.
it's, it sounds like these pastas might not yet be on the market for people to get in the grocery store, but hopefully will be soon. But for people at home who want to kind of use this information, sounds like they could add puree of something like a Great Northern bean or a light colored yellow bean to what they're baking with, or they could encourage people that they want access to these pastas and try to encourage companies to start making them. What kind of tips would you have for people to use this information at home?
Well, the easiest thing, like I said, is to make a puree and that canned product. Because when you do that, you're already taking a very safe product. Because if you take a raw bean and make a flour out of it without cooking it first, then you run into some digestibility issues with the lectin activity. So you want to have a cooked canned product and using a bean puree into any bread mix. You can put it in pancakes if you want. I love the cornbread idea. It actually makes a great addition to an infant complementary food. So that's something that we've been working on already with some of our collaborators here at Cornell University and abroad. We've come up with a wonderful complementary food there. I think, did that answer your question?
Yeah, no, that was perfect. Really good points about we want to be working with a cooked product and just some practical ways to use it at home. And I know one thing we often hear in on nutrition side of things is that if you have iron that's in plant foods, if you have it with vitamin C, that can kind of help your body absorb more of it. So how does vitamin C or other aspects of the food matrix come into play here?
Well, vitamin C is definitely a strong promoter because it allows for it puts the iron in a form that allows for it to be taken up by the transporters in the intestine. It doesn't always, though, break through the strong inhibitory fractions, such as the seed coat flavonoids, because, like I said, some of those compounds just once it complexes iron, it's done. It's stuck in that compound. But definitely getting more vitamin C in with a meal, if you're looking at iron nutrition, isn't gonna hurt. It can only help. And you can find vitamin C in a lot of things. Tomato sauce, particularly if you're looking at a bean-based pasta. Uh, Orange juice, of course, any of the juices will be very strong. Grape juice, red grape juice is not going to work because then you got those same compounds that inhibit iron nutrition. But I think some of your apple juices will do quite well too, in combining it with foods to get better bioavailability of iron.
A lot of factors at play to consider. How about something like lemon juice?
Lemon juice can work too. Yeah, it can. It's once again, it depends how much and how much relative to the other things. And the flip side, we talked about some of the market classes not having good iron nutrition, but the flip side to that is you get great antioxidant nutrition. So it's important then to not only to eat a diversity of foods and food products like we were talking about, but a diversity of the beans. If you're a big bean eater, to mix it up. If you're a woman of childbearing age and you're a vegetarian or a vegan, then definitely iron nutrition is going to be of a primary concern. So that's where you'd want to, the white beans, slow darkening, varieties, and the manteca yellows, when they become more prevalent in the food supply here in the U.S., will be a great source of iron nutrition.
You beat me to my next question, which was iron bioavailability, and considering all that is obviously incredibly important, especially even more so for certain target audiences. But we also want to think about all the benefits that could come with having different seed coat colors. So yeah, you're getting different phytonutrients in there. So there's a good argument to kind of have a mix, like you said, really incorporate a variety.
Well, that's, in the US here, we're really blessed with the opportunities to get a diverse food supply. And I think it's as consumers are getting more and more aware, from some of the work you do and what you're educating a lot of people on. I'm very optimistic, and I get a lot of people, coming to me about, okay, how can I get more iron in my diet? I'm iron deficient. I'm anemic, and we're seeing that as it's on the iron deficiency anemia is on the rise in the U.S. So a lot of it is going to be food choices. That's one way you can sort of help prevent and not predispose yourself to iron deficiency.
Yeah, and I think sometimes when you start talking about iron, the assumption that is kind of in the back of people's minds, at least in the US, like you said, is it's not really an issue here. But like you just pointed out, that's not the case, and we're kind of seeing a not so positive trend right now. But also globally too, there are challenges. So this is an issue that has relevance around the world. So do you want to kind of share about some of the other parts of the world that may be really impacted by this information?
I mean, we know that about a third of the world is affected by iron deficiency and iron deficiency anemia. Which, if you think about that, that's why it's the leading nutritional deficiency and why it's such a big topic. And why are we talking about linking beans and iron? Well, beans are such an inherent component of many food systems that it's a great vehicle to to move this nutrient into the food supply and address this and alleviate these nutritional issues. Diversity is also a way to get much better iron nutrition. And as humans, that's what our system is designed to do. What's happened in the food supply over the past several, maybe 5, 6, 7, 8 decades, is certain regions of the world get enough calories, but they've started to lack diversity. And that was part of the problem and why we see such high iron deficiency rates in certain regions of the world, particularly East Africa. But there's many other places too. So diversity is really key. If you can't eat meats or can't get access to animal sources of protein and iron, that's going to be one contributing factor. But if all you have is simply wheat and rice and maize and very little of the legumes, you're gonna run a risk of iron deficiency anemia. And that's what's I think important to a food system is we got to start diversifying the cropping and what people are consuming. And in places where that's a real challenge and we can't do that, okay, then we got to move the the pulse crop varieties to those that are going to deliver more of bioavailable iron and educate the consumers on which ones to go to for that. And that's where the dry beans are such a great opportunity because of all those color classes. And we know now that there are at least, there are several market classes where we can elevate that iron nutrition.
Absolutely. And I think one point I also just want to clarify for folks is that the beans you're talking about, these are not genetically engineered, these are non-GMO, these are natural. We're using the natural diversity within beans. So in case anybody has a concern about GMO products, you're taking advantage of that natural diversity, right?
Absolutely. Traditional breeding methods are more than enough to get the job done. Talk the iron nutrition from beans. But it's also important to identify the ones that are already doing the job and providing that. And that's some of the exciting and I think very optimistic things that I'm seeing in our research program.
Yeah, so speaking of what you're excited for, what are you looking forward to in the next couple of years? What are you hoping to see, consumers catch on to and companies catch on to and start kind of supplying products, taking advantage of all this information?
Well, I think there's a real opportunity for a lot of our food producing companies, and I think they've struggled with it in the past, is being able to take advantage of the nutritional knowledge that we're putting out there and bring more of that to the consumers, adding more value to their products. I think they could get better label claims. That I mean, we know a lot of certain bean varieties are high in bioavailable iron. I don't see any obstacles where companies could not put that on their actual label because with the body of work that we have now certainly supports is tremendous amount of evidence to support that. Making products that are, just from this basic applied research that we're doing that can meet some of these nutritional needs are some of the exciting things I think that are coming.
Absolutely. Make it, I mean, consumers they're smart, they're excited about this. So if we can make sure that companies can then kind of be that bridge that makes sure that the research is actually available for then people to enjoy in their own kitchens. And I think that's really important. So I appreciate the work you're doing in that space.
And getting the word out to the growers,
Yeah.
the bean growers organizations and that too, so that they're part of the stakeholders for what we do here with the USDA. And that's going to be a real focus of probably the next 5, 6, 7 years of my work is really completing, the loop of doing. We've done all the basic research now. We've done a lot of applied research, but now it's time to get that information in the hands of the growers and the stakeholders, and then expand it and make a more sustainable, nutritious food supply.
I love that. And like you said, really, really working at that nexus of agriculture and nutrition. So very, very important space, impactful space to be in. And I have to ask you about some of your favorite bean recipes. But before I do, is there anything else that you'd like to share that you don't feel like you've had a chance to talk about yet?
I think we've covered it all, but the one thing I wanted to emphasize is this discovery, this accomplishment that we've had of identifying that interaction in the seed coat flavonoids and how that affects iron nutrition and iron nutrition in general, not just with relative to beans. We don't have a lot of good knowledge, complete knowledge of how flavonoids impact iron. But by being able to identify how the non-darkening gene and the slow darkening gene change the profile of those seed coat flavonoids, that's a major discovery. And what we're finding in our research now is we're able to elevate the iron nutrition in at least 4 different market classes of beans. So we have yellows, we have pintos, cranberry, and from some of our international collaborators in Africa, the purple variety. So we're working on that. We're thinking there's a couple more that we can get some in effects that are very positive. And these are not just small differences. These are bringing that market class from very low up to a nice, healthy, moderately high bioavailability, similar to a nice Great Northern bean, a white bean for the abscess. So that's real exciting. Look forward to seeing how that expands as we move forward.
I love following your research and I look forward to seeing what the next few years have in store, both, here in the US, but also the broader implications globally. So on that note, what's one of your favorite bean recipes, Ray?
I used to think it was. I love beans and chili, with some meat in that too. But we just recently produced a video with one of the ARS news organizations, and it's a series called Cooking with Science. So this was shot at the National Arboretum down in Washington, D.C. And we had this wonderful chef from Montgomery Community College there. She made this dish called zupa etrushka, which is a multi-bean mix along with a lot of greens and that in it. And I didn't think I would like it, you know. Um, it was fabulous. So I looked that up. Like I said, there's several different varieties of beans in there.
I will definitely link to that video and I hope they release the recipe because now that you've said, even though you didn't expect to like it, you loved it, I have to try it.
Yeah, there's a number of ones on. I just looked it up this morning. There's a number of other recipes right there. So, um, and that has to be. I would think that would be a very nutritious meal with the diversity of beans and how she prepared it. So,
Yeah, it sounds delicious. Delicious and nutritious. So it doesn't
yeah,
get better than that.
it was
How,
very good.
how about at home? If somebody says, okay, this is great information, I want to start including more beans in my diet, but maybe they're short on time. If they just want just a really quick meal that they could pull together in their own kitchen, not take too long, what would be kind of one of your go-to recommendations for a recipe like that?
Well, that's where, as we develop, I think, better bean pasta products, they do tend to cook pretty fast. So I would recommend that. Now, if you're looking to get a bean pasta that's going to be the same as a wheat pasta, you're going to have some texture differences there. You'll have some slight flavor differences as well. But that's one of the things I would try. I like the idea of you can soak beans, you can put them in like a bean salad, or you get that nice salad dressing vinegary flavor. I think that's one of the greatest and easiest things to do. And I believe that's usually done with canned beans. Is a great way to do that. There's nothing easier than opening up a can, draining off the liquid and putting it in. The other thing I'd recommend is, don't just throw away those juices that you have after you cook. Keep the stock of when you cook beans and if you're going to spend a lot of time, cooking a pot of beans to make whatever you're going to make with it, then save that stock. Don't just drain it off and use it in other dishes because you'll preserve a lot of great nutrition there.
And flavor too. I love that you said that because that broth is so flavorful and people kind
Hmm.
of just dump it sometimes. Dump it like you might dump pasta water, but don't do that. You can use it to cook rice, you can put it in
Yeah.
soups. What are some of your favorite ways to use that broth?
Well, I haven't really had to apply it much yet, but I learned that from the chef down on the National Arboretum as she was cooking that dish. So I think you could add it into just about anything you're going to cook in the crock pot. For example, even if you're going to throw some meat in there, why not throw some of the broth from a bean dish or something like that in. It's not going to hurt. It's going to add a lot of flavor, and you're going to can take a lot of the antioxidants that you may have cooked off and then lost into the solution and bring it right back into play.
Okay, so in that broth, what you're getting some of those antioxidants, any other important nutrition aspects in there?
You're certainly losing some minerals in that. We find that iron stays pretty good in the beans, but you can lose maybe 5%. But the flavonoids, you lose a lot of those flavonoids into the seed coat. Some of the vitamins, folate is probably one of the other vitamins that you lose a lot of in that, and your B vitamins that are present there.
Yeah, so flavor, nutrition, and you can save money because instead of buying
E-
a veggie or
Exactly.
meat stock, you can use bean stock.
Yep, yep. Save that stock and use it for something.
Love that. That's an excellent tip. So, Ray, if people want to find out more about the really important work that you and your research team are doing, we know we can link to that video that's coming out real soon. Any other places they can look to find more about your work?
Certainly our USDA website. It might not be as updated as it should be, but we're working on that. Feel free to just do a Google search. You'll find my name everywhere when it comes to iron nutrition. And if they're really interested, by all means, give me a call, send me an email, and I'm happy to speak with any groups or any even individuals. I get calls all the time. It makes for a fun day. So I'm easy to find.
Well, and you truly are an absolute expert in this, not just in the US, but globally. So thank you for that offer for people to reach out and for your time sharing today. I so appreciate you joining. And again, I
Well,
will keep watching what you're doing.
thank you, Chelsea, for what you're doing here with this. This is you're doing great work. So
Thank you. Appreciate that. Well, let's talk again soon and let's go eat some beans and bean stock, shall we?
sounds good. All right.
Thank you.